Hello everyone, it's Oliver Harper here. For this video I interview Lisa Downs, the director of Life After Flash, Life After the Navigator and the upcoming documentary Life After the Neverending Story. In this interview we explore her career as a filmmaker and the challenges of making these productions and the joy of revisiting movies that played a big part of our youth. She is currently running a Kickstarter to help her finish the production to get this documentary into the hands of the fans. Enjoy. So Lisa, how did you start your sort of documentary film career, and how did the sort of Life After series come about?
Funnily enough, I actually wanted to be an actor when I wanted to be in movies, and I didn't realize that people made them. I just knew that people were in them. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be an actor. That's the only way I can be in film. And then as a result, I ended up doing a TV production course in a wonderful town in Australia called Wagga Wagga, very country, kangaroos and cow tipping, and, all of that. And it was there I discovered that A, I was terrible at acting, and B, I actually really liked directing. So it was during that course that for my third year project, I wanted to do something different. Everyone was doing like short films around the main street or, some kind of agricultural themed thing. And I was like, well, what if I do something like overseas? And my mum was obsessed with the Dalai Lama, still is. She thinks she was like a Tibetan in another life, and was reading the book written by the sister. This is long winded. The sister of the Dalai Lama, who set up a Tibetan children's village in India, where all the Tibetans can live and learn the religion and learn the language until they can go back to Tibet. And she said, you should email Jess and Pema, see if you can do a documentary. So I did. I didn't expect her to write back with a date, with an interview. So I was like, I guess I'm going to India. And then my dad went on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in Australia, won a little bit of money, which allowed them to come with us, bought a camera.
Nice.
And then that was my first foray into documentaries, and I really enjoyed it. It was called Lost Children of Tibet. And then after that, I worked for a documentary company, a travel documentary company, and just really enjoyed that medium. And the Life After series kind of happened after a few years of working in television in England. I had moved from Australia and I was working for other people, and I was making their dreams happen, and I was like, I really want to do a feature documentary.
Sure.
But I didn't know what. And then I was at a party with a friend, and she had just worked with Sam Jones on a TV show called The Jump in England.
Oh, right.
He didn't actually get on screen because he broke his shoulder.
Ooh.
So she met him in the hospital and they were chatting, and she was telling me about it. And I was like, oh my God, Flash Gordon. I love Flash Gordon. I wonder what he did since the film. I love Ted, but I don't know what else he's done. And then we talked about maybe doing a documentary about him. And then I pitched it to him, and then I was on Skype, and then suddenly I was in Texas. So that is a very concise version of what happened from 2004 to 2014.
In terms of release, though, you've got because after the Flash documentary came out after Life After Navigator, right?
Flash was first.
Flash was first, wasn't it? Okay,
so
sorry.
Flash came out in 2019. It took that long to make it,
Right.
As with indie film, I Skyped Sam end of 2014, met him 2015. We finished it in end of 2017, but then we spent a year doing film festivals and talking to sales agents and distribution companies. And it's true what they say, the hard work really is once you finish the film. And at the time, I was like, don't be stupid. But it is. And so it took a year to get it out and find a home. But during filming Flash, we started filming for Navigator.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because I remember seeing some sort of the press for Navigator. I think, oh, okay, that's gonna be the first one, and then how things transpire and things get released. Also you kind of saw the potential in sort of nostalgia and 80s, because obviously we've got Neverending Story coming up. So what was kind of quite special to you about the Neverending Story?
I think anyone who can connect with films when they're young will realize why it's special. As an adult, you still kind of hark back, as Lamar says in the documentary, you hark back to a time when you didn't have responsibility, and you didn't have heartbreak, and you didn't have, taxes to pay, and you didn't have really like anything to worry about that we do as adults. And so now we're adults, we're like, I miss those times of feeling like you can escape into these films where it felt like a coming out of the 70s into 80s movies, you're watching films about kids your own age. It really before that you had like Star Wars, but they were still in their 20s, and suddenly you've got the Goonies and Labyrinth and Neverending Story and Flight of the Navigator, where you are finally seeing people that you could be friends with, and maybe you could have that adventure, because
Yeah.
it's just like watching you on screen. And so I think that was really special. And something about the Neverending Story, it's just such a magical, hopeful, sad, so many emotions when you watch it as a kid, and it just sticks with you. You know, maybe I wouldn't love it if I saw it as an adult for the first time, but
Yeah, that is a thing where sort of, also when you go back and look at maybe reviews at the time where the adults watching it just didn't connect with them, and then you sort of
exactly.
over the years, like when kids grew up with these movies, they adore them and they find it kind of baffling in a way where certain movies were how people reacted to them at the time. I always find it quite amusing when I have Roger Ebert talk about, or Gene Siskel talk about a movie everyone loves from the 80s, but
Yeah.
they hated it, and everyone's just kind of, this film kind of bombed. And as you were saying, that sort of crossover in the 70s to the 80s. The 80s had this kind of wonderful selection of movies, fantasy movies that really appealed to children. Not all of them kind of performed well. It's kind of strange where everyone saw this genre that seemed really they could make loads of money out of, but you had a lot of bombs like Krull, cost like 50 million. It made peanuts, but I think everyone saw Conan the Barbarian or something, or Dark Crystal, and think, oh, okay, we could do more of that. And then it's like Labyrinth is like, it still makes Sony pictures loads of money, but at the time it wasn't a massive hit, and it's kind of strange in that way.
As soon as it hit home movies and we could watch it over and over again, because I didn't see these films in the cinema. I didn't have that experience that so many people talk about, where my dad took me to the movies and I remember the music and I remember the colors. And like, I think Jurassic Park was my first film in the cinema, but I don't really remember. So for me, it was when they would bring home the VHS, or it would be on TV and I would record it on the VHS. And that's when I started to watch them over and over again.
Yeah.
And that in itself was this magical thing, that you didn't have to go to the cinema to watch these films. You could just watch it at home. And I used to sit in front of the film, like the TV, and reenact. I remember watching Lucas with Corey Haim and like just trying to reenact the bit where he's like really happy at the end. And my dad would always walk in. He's like, "Are you trying to act in the films again?" And, and trying to
We've all done bits like that in the past as
and
children,
it's so special. And I think what also is really special about a lot of 80s films is that they didn't really have sequels. The 80s, yes,
Yeah.
Neverending Story had two, but we don't count them. But people seem to care more about the story and the characters as
Yes.
opposed to the IP or a sequel and how can we make money. And they respected the films and went, we can't make a sequel because it's too special to touch.
Yeah, there's certain movies which they've tried to redo, but the remakes have always been terrible, especially in the case of something like RoboCop. But Neverending Story had two sequels, which the author loved or was involved with, but they weren't very good. Number two was kind of okay as a kid. I didn't hate it, but number three is kind of a bit of a mess. But also, kind of strangely, that we all grew up, most of us, with the international cut of the Neverending Story and Lamar's kind of famous pop song, which is always kind of, when you see Lamar and his hair at the time, it's always quite shocking. He kind of, I don't know what advice he was getting about his haircut, but anyway. But the German one I saw recently.
Yeah, I didn't even realize there was a German version until maybe 10 years ago or something. Like it was, and it's so different, but it's not different,
Yeah, it's kind of like the opening titles
feeling.
are just the opening titles are like really bland, but
Yeah.
once you kind of see how they structured the music, it actually kind of works really well in the German one, where you've got the Happy Flight musical cue. Doesn't
Yeah.
get used early on; it gets used when he's actually Atreus on Falcor to get to the next destination or something near the end. I was like, that
Yeah.
works perfectly because you're not
Yeah.
in it
But
before.
it's funny, the very, very first vinyl I ever bought, and I still have it, with the Neverending Story soundtrack.
Oh
It
wow!
probably, I want to say 95, 94, 95 in Hornsby in Australia. And I would listen to it on my dad's record player, and it didn't click that it wasn't the synth version, and it's such a special soundtrack to be listening to. And it brought all the same feelings in as what I got when I watched the movie, but it just didn't click to me that they were, that it wasn't the international version that I saw. So, it's so
Yeah.
special in so many ways. And yeah, I think it's really interesting to watch the German version now. What the that there is one.
Yeah, yeah, and also what you've mentioned earlier about people's emotional connection to Neverending Story is kind of those, well, the famous, infamous scene of the horse kind of dying of depression, essentially drowning in the thing, which is everyone, yeah, because everyone gets so emotional about it. Even like you watch it as an adult, it's just like it's heart wrenching because Noah is so good in that sequence, and in the making of, you can see off camera Wolfgang Peterson crying as he
Yeah.
sees this happen. It's so powerful, and
Yeah.
it's but also as a kid, it was very upsetting watching my sisters who were just like in tears,
Yeah.
But it's the end bit that always got me was because the wolf. You see that wonderful moment where you got the murals on the wall of all his exploits throughout the film, and he sees the wolf, and it's right behind him. Like, that is so good, but obviously terrifying,
Yeah.
because everyone had nightmares of wolves and stuff. My sister was terrified of them, so it was kind of, it all kind of it had. I think I think there's a comment. I think Jim Henson maybe said years ago that kids should be scared by things.
I think
You
I
shouldn't
think so.
cut
It's a
back too much. But the '80s fantasy films, Dark Crystal, even the Superman 3 woman turns into a big cyborg, gets pulled into the machine. It was terrifying to kids, but Neverending Story had this kind of loads of elements that really had the happiness, but also the sadness. And
I think it's good for kids to experience different emotions growing up, because for me, one of the biggest things outside of Artax was Littlefoot's mum. Like even just to look at a picture now, I start to cry when I think of Land Before Time because it's just so heartbreaking. But
yeah,
kids need to experience these different emotions. Because also the payoffs at the end of these films wouldn't be the same if you didn't have that heartbreak at the beginning.
yeah.
And also something that's really fun with like Neverending Story, not that the horse scene was fun. It's like it's like people in their 30s, 40s. It's like a communal club. It's like I was traumatized by Artax as well. Like, and you can, it's this thing we have in common.
Yeah. Well, see, even for me as a kid, like American Tail, where Fievel loses his family, and at the end, his dad spots him, and I was just like, even think about it now makes me want to cry. But when he finds him, just like so happy at the end, he spent the entire time he couldn't find him, and it's those kind of movies don't come around that often, that hitting that emotional beats.
I don't think we have them as much now.
No, we don't. No, but as you get older, you blub more at things more easily. I find it might be the wine. I don't know, but also in the case of your series of documentaries, the Life After series, also you haven't gone out to make a straight up making of. You've gone out with an idea to essentially provide a narrative about how the film was made, but also reflecting on the actors and the cast, or the crew, sorry, where they are now and what's kind of transpired over those years. So what was that your kind of idea from the get-go? Or was it just something that's kind of formed naturally with your process of trying to make the Flash Gordon one?
Yeah, well, Flash actually started out just the story of Sam because I'm really interested in the human story, what happened from A to B in between that you maybe don't know about, especially when in between headlines. And then so we started filming about his story and his family. And then he was like, well, the crux of what I went through in life really happened in Flash Gordon. So you have to talk to Melody to talk about the experience. So we talked to Melody Anderson. It's her birthday today as well. Happy birthday, Melody.
Happy birthday, Melody.
And then he was like, well, you should talk to Brian Blessed. We're still friends. So we, talked to Brian Blessed. And then when we started to hear these anecdotes of what happened on set, it just made sense to also blend together a making of. But I knew I didn't want it to be a full making of because there were lots of fan films at the time. I think Back in Time had just come out and I knew there was a Ghostbusters one. And so I thought, well, my point of difference can be a making of and the human story at the same time. And so that's what I've tried to do. They're all going to have, some might be more biographical, the making of in some, and then some might be more of a making of depending on what film I'm doing. But that's definitely the blend that I would like to get, because everyone likes a good making of. I mean, I love all these films that are coming out. But I also really like to get to know the subject in a way that maybe you wouldn't see in a regular kind of sit down interview.
Yeah, I mean, because with Sam, obviously his career was kind of, after Flash, was kind of affected by it because they dubbed him over.
They
In
did.
my eyes, sort of. So even as a kid, I thought it was really good dubbing. You wouldn't know, So I always thought he sounded like that till he spoke in like years later. I'm like, God,
Really
he's a
rusty
really
voice.
deep voice. It's like, whoa.
And
But
that really affected him, and he didn't know he
yeah,
was dubbed until he went to the premiere. No one
mm,
told him that it was
yeah,
going to happen. And that really affected him, and his ego had got in the way, and he was given poor advice. They argued about money. He was going to do
mm,
sequels. He never did. And so, I think that always bothered him. But we were very lucky. He took us to Mexico for the day in Tijuana when he was doing his security work, and we went to a few Comic Cons with him in Texas and England.
mm,
So it was really great to get to know him. And what is special to me, because I loved these films growing up,
yeah,
and so you're just like, please make the cast as lovely as you hope that they're going
yeah,
to. And so I've just been really lucky with people like Sam and Tammy and Joey
mm.
Kramer, are just like the most wonderful people, and it's been a really special journey doing these films.
You've had a great opportunity to meet these people. Also, you've got the great access as well. Like Brian May, you got got involved, and in the case with Neverending Story, you've got Lemar kind of talking about it, and sort of you've got other cast members, but also you've got like the producer of Neverending Story. It's a shame that Wolfgang had sort of passed away. And
Yeah, well, he had said yes to
yeah,
an interview in January 2020, and I just thought, oh, because I hate to miss opportunities, and I thought maybe I should just go in February to do it. But I was producing a show for Sky at the time, and I just couldn't step away again. I had to film some for Navigator, and I thought I'll just do it in April when my job is over and my ticket is booked. But
yeah.
obviously no one could expect. But I would have loved to have met Wolfgang.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's interesting that he was sort of seen maybe as not the right guy to do it, but he sort of his skill at communicating with the kids was amazing. I suppose that's that Steven Spielberg touch where he can get the best out of child actors,
Yeah.
and like Richard Donner with like Goonies, you can get the best out of them. And also like it's just we mentioned earlier, it's like I think in the case of maybe before recording that the author didn't like Wolfgang's kind of interpretation of the book.
Yeah. And you can see, I understand why authors rarely like the film adaptations. You can fit so much detail into a book. As a creative, you see it in your head one way, and so it maybe doesn't align with what the director of the film ultimately would do. But yeah, I think one of the biggest things was Wolfgang wanted this to be his international, like to break the international market. So he knew it needed to be big, and that didn't align with what Michael Ende was wanting. I think
Mm,
Michael Ende also had very big issues with Bernd Eichinger, the
mm,
producer. Um,
right.
very like chalk and cheese personalities. So there was a lot of conflict from the start, which I think they just couldn't resolve. But then he went and did 2 and 3. So he
He
must have
did,
liked the
yeah.
paycheck.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Once money's involved, they thought, "Oh, okay, it seems like a good idea now." Do you think this is the most challenging for you so far in terms of like getting access to the cast and crew, or is it quite easy? But also, you've made this documentary without crowdfunding the initial sort of post production and production itself, because at the moment you're sort of we've got the Kickstarter going and you're sort of trying to get it over the finish line. But I think you may maybe done Indiegogo in the past with the other ones, perhaps.
for Flash, we did 2 small rounds for Indigo. Flash was hard in the sense that I didn't know what I was doing. Some of the casts were really difficult to find. Like Topple took me ages to find.
Oh right.
Brian May was actually hard to get a contact, and when I did, even though he said yes, it took 2 years to book because he's so busy.
What?
Um, I had to navigate editing a feature documentary that I'd never done before. I didn't know really what I was doing, so that was hard in the sense of there were so many hurdles to learn what I was doing.
Yeah.
Navigator was pretty easy because Randall Kleiser, the director of Flight of the Navigator, was just like, I know pretty much everyone. So he
Oh
just
wow.
emailed everyone. He set up the reunion. I just went really methodically through everything I had learned from Flash in terms of structure and people that I could approach. I had a great composer already. I had someone to go to for graphics. So that was
Oh, that's
kind of
good.
really
Mm.
easy to make. And Joey was so accessible and just keen to help however he could. Neverending Story was tricky because the pandemic was kind of emotionally a really big block in the middle.
Yeah.
And so the original narrative didn't end up what I was hoping. So that was hard to try and shift and to be like, okay, I can't change what's happened. What can I make with what I have?
Yeah.
And it was hard, when you have people like Thilo Bruckner and Wolfgang say yes, and then obviously devastating for them, their families. And, I would have loved to have interviewed them.
Yeah.
But it was really challenging financially, this one, because I tried not to do a crowd fund. I felt maybe people were exhausted by crowd funds. And so I just thought I'll try and do this on my own, but it did get to a point where I couldn't, hence
Yeah.
the current Kickstarter. But
Yeah.
I did okay considering, but it was just financially, it was really stressful.
Yeah, they are, because I think there's a sort of slight confusion with people that sort of see Kickstarters being produced, in particular with documentaries, where the money that can be raised, if you kind of meet your goal, you sort of think, okay, well, I should be able to do this, but the cost of actually then releasing it is a whole nother thing. There's always kind of producers say there's making the movie and then releasing the movie is very different things, and that's always a challenge, I think. And I think you've done an amazing job sort of getting this mostly all done, without the sort of going to get the last little bits finished out of your own, own funding. And I think that's,
thank you again. You're always learning. I'm always meeting wonderful people, but it's just when you're trying to coordinate shoots and edit and film, and it's then hard to have your raising money hat on, and then like, how do I distribute it hat on? So this Kickstarter really is just it's like the Blu-ray production, the insurance, the rating with BBFC, like you say, all these kind of little costs that that people don't think about. And it's funny, I saw on a forum, I had posted about it, and I saw someone comment going, "Oh, that's not a good sign doing a Kickstarter." And I was like, it's actually finished. Like, if you want me to send you a link, I could actually show you it's all finished. It's all done. This is just so I don't have to spend 6 months trying to work out how to get the Blu-ray made. I can be like, it's a successful campaign. I can email the Blu-ray guy tomorrow and make it better. So it does have a certain stigma, which is why I avoided it. But I feel like with these films, because they're so fan-centric, I need to embrace crowdfunding more. I think but I'll do it early on so people don't have exhaustion of me going, sorry, crowdfund.
If people back this Kickstarter, what do they get in return? Also, you mentioned a Blu-ray.
I'm a big physical media person. There's the option for the Neverending Story Blu-ray. Things like this allow me to do like subtitling too, which is a luxury, I think, in a release, like German subtitles, English subtitles, more bonus features. You can get the Blu-rays of the other documentaries as well. There's a great Blu-ray bundle pack. They come with patches, handwritten notes. You can own Falcor's fur. I have actually a little piece of Falcor's fur from his head.
Really?
If anyone wants that. Like AP credits, name and credits as a thanks. Life After Movies fan club subscription. Like different fun perks for hopefully all styles and interests.
Excellent. I mean, I'm not sure if you can reveal any sort of your future plans for this kind of series. I mean, have you got anything you can maybe reveal what you think you want to work on next after Neverending Story?
So we're halfway through filming Life After Goodfellas, which is a slight foray into the 90s. And then we're also harping back slightly to 1978 with Life After Grease.
Wow.
I love Grease, and Randall Kleiser, obviously, who directed Flight of the Navigator, directed Grease. And I spent 2 years of like Christmas cards going, let's do Life After Grease. Let's do Life After Grease. So we started filming for that. And then there are 3 back to the 80s, like so iconic 80s movies that are in the works that hopefully I can announce 2, if not 3, in the next couple of months. But I'm so excited about them. So it'll be definitely back to the 80s for them.
Yeah, because you had mentioned a couple to me, a couple of weeks ago. So I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. So
yeah, I think
people will be super excited about that.
There's 2 weeks left on the Kickstarter. We're very close to hitting the target. But if people are still interested in pledging anything, it would be wonderfully appreciated, because the more I can raise, the better I can make the release.
Exactly. I'll put links. There'll be links, people watching this, down below. I've already pledged as well, so I'm not just, fibbing.
He's not lying. He actually did, and I'm very grateful.
Well, thank you, Lisa, for taking, for giving up your time to talk to me about this. And like many others of my age, similar age, we grew up with Neverending Story. I love the movie. I love the music. And as like you said earlier about the soundtrack, I always go back to it every couple of months. Especially with a Happy Flight track. It's just so upbeat, and it hasn't dated. Something that's kind of you listen to some music from the 80s or film scores, you think, oh, it's a bit clunky with its synth, but like this, I think also like the Labyrinth soundtrack or like the Terminator. It's always something that's kind of, it always come back to you, and it always it seems kind of timeless. I think it works.
It's special.
Exactly.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and click the bell to be notified of my latest retrospectives and reviews. Big thanks to my patrons for supporting the channel. If you want to get involved and gain early access to my content and exclusive videos, then follow the link below.